Once upon a time, long ago, men and dwarves lived together beneath the roof of one great city. Some said it was the oldest and greatest city in the world, and had existed before the time of the Longbeards and the Manlings, built by older and wiser hands in the dawn of the world. The city lay both above and below the earth, in keeping with the nature of the populace that dwelt there. The dwarves ruled in their great halls of stone below ground, and wrestled the fruits of the rock free with their day-long toil, while the manlings reaped the fields of swaying corn that surrounded the city with a patchwork blanket of gold. The men smiled, they laughed, and everyone was happy. That's just the beginning part of what came to be known as the Doom of Kavzar. For those of you who don't know and want to read further of that little tale, I advise you to Google the Doom of Kavzar. In any event, welcome back, my loyal fans, to another exciting edition of Kavzar's Settlement Showcase. I almost forgot to record this video. But before you, in the middle of the night, or early morning I should say, is Murkwater construction site. Now, I'm going to warn you, as I've done in other videos, that this settlement specifically causes a huge reduction in my frame rate because I'm playing on an Xbox One and I am using the crap out of the extended borders and unlimited building mods, and I decided to, in honor of my Warhammer Fantasy hobby, dedicate Murkwater construction site to being a homage to my first Warhammer Fantasy army, the Skaven. And for those of you who are familiar with it, no, I do not play Age of Sigmar. I started playing Warhammer during 7th edition and 8th edition. Now, as I'm creeping up on the settlement here through the swamps, there's a reason I decided to have it. And there's that horrible drop in frame rate. There's two pillars out in front of the settlement that I covered in neon lights with the number 13. And here you have the vault door that leads into the settlement. I made it look like a clock, or at least I attempted to. And it is in honor of the Skaven city of Skavenblight, which no longer exists. Now, even though the frame rate issue is resultant by and large because of the fact that I made the center building, the tower of Skavenblight, I made it literally 13 floors. That's why the frame rate is so bad, also in part because of the light and shadows generated because of those neon lights out front. So, but it's so bad at this settlement that the beds that I put inside of the tower, of which I think there's one or two, to try and save with, since I'm in survival mode, it won't even let me use the bed. It's rendering physically, but it won't let me actually interact with it for whatever reason. So, I'm going to try and keep this video fairly short. I know it's agonizing to watch because of the poor frame rate when we live in an era of 1080p 60 hertz. Or 60 frames per second, however you want to say that. Anyways, so right next to the main door, which we have lined with all manner of mod turrets, Fat Man, plasma turrets, gamma turrets, Fat Man's right there. Got a little kind of walkway area here, and that is how power gets out to the rest of the settlement. Just through that little hole right there. And it comes from what I affectionately named the Doom Room, which is supposed to be kind of ironic because of the fact that it's nuclear powered. So in here we have two fusion reactors that feed the settlement, 200 power, which to be honest I don't really use even a fraction of that. But anyways, here you have the bog part of the settlement, swampy part, can't really build and or farm there. Here we have the southwestern corner, lined with plasma turrets. And I made it so it's pretty much anything green related, radiation related, etc. Plasma turrets, gamma turrets, and Fat Man turrets. In honor of Warpstone, which the Skaven use extensively in their society. So here we have the southeastern corner. Basically, there's nothing really to worry about in the south because the only thing that you really needed to worry about is the gunners in Quincy, the gunners in Gunners Plaza, the super mutants in that general area. There's a couple of there's a ghoul infestation there in Suffolk County Charter School. And there's a Mirelurk Queen right in the near vicinity of this site when you first come here to the settlement. So it's pretty dangerous, but once you clear all that stuff out, pretty quiet around here with the exception of your occasional random ghoul horde. So, dark, dreary, perfect for my Skavenblight tower. And as you'll notice, it's frickin' massive. And that's why my game has such a hard time rendering it. And I might even crash, so bear with me, folks. Here we have the northeastern defense. There's one on every corner. A bunch of plasma turrets. And you'll notice I didn't render on that side because, well, you weren't supposed to see that. I actually did earlier, but I decided to delete it because it was really bad. Bad frame rate. All hail Skavenblight. I should have that as my desktop background. And of course the address is number 13. Now, as I said before, beds for whatever reason. Oh wow, it actually will let me interact with it for once. Ordinarily it wouldn't let me. And this particular settlement was time intensive only because of how frickin' tall I wanted every areas so you can kind of look out and be able to see any threats coming. You can help your defenses, etc. Of course, there's the monoliths in front of the settlement that I powered. That's in reference to the Skaven obelisks that give the Council of 13 their god powers from the Horned Rat, for those of you who are familiar with the Skaven. Here we have another third floor, and it's a lot higher. You see there's a crashed vertebrate over there, a sunken barn or something in the swamp. And for those of you who know, Skavenblight is in fact in a swamp. You can see here, downtown Boston, crystal clear. You can see Diamond City's lights from here. There's the Gunners Plaza, which is a huge fortification of gunners, which is terrifying, so never go near there. The Pridwin is the Brotherhood of Steel at the airport. I'm going to keep ascending. And we're pretty high up there, and I am terrified of heights in real life. Thankfully this isn't real, but we are pretty high up here. And right up here is the roof. Now, what I initially wanted to do, but really didn't have the ability hardware-wise, and also the know-how to do so back then, I wanted to put some kind of bell tower up here, but unfortunately there's nothing even remotely resembling one, so what I did instead was I put that up here. As close as I could get. And there you have it. One of the best views of the Commonwealth, and as far as I know, probably the highest point that I've ever built in any of my Kavzar Settlement Showcase videos. And you can see the sun rising right now. It is 7:49 in the morning. And that is it for the video, ladies and gentlemen. Tried to keep it pretty short. I'm going to finish by reading the rest of the Doom of Kavzar tale for you. One day the men of the city decided that they should give praise to their gods for their good fortunes. They planned a temple such as the world had never seen before. In the central square, a colossal hall would be built and topped with a single cloud-piercing tower. a tower so tall it would touch the very heart of the heavens. After much planning and help with the Longbeards, they set about their monumental task. Weeks became months, and months became years, and still the manlings built. Men grew old and gray working on that great temple, their sons continuing their work through summer sun and winter rain. At last, after many generations, work began on the great spire itself. Years passed, and the tower reached such a height that the manlings found it ever more difficult to take the stone up to the top. Eventually, the work slowed to a crawl, and finishing the tower seemed impossible. Then one came among the men of the city who offered his help in their great scheme. He asked a single boon of them in return, and claimed that if they would grant him this, he would complete the tower in a single night. The manlings said to themselves, "What have we to lose?" and offered to make a bargain with the gray-clad stranger. All he wished was to add his own dedication to the gods onto the temple's structure. The manlings agreed, and the bargain was struck. At dusk, the stranger entered the unfinished temple and bade the manlings to return at midnight. Clouds swept over the moons, cloaking the temple in darkness as the manlings left. All over the city, men watched and waited as the hours slipped past until, near midnight, by ones and twos, they gathered again in the temple square. The wind blew and the clouds parted as they gazed up at the temple. It rose like an unbroken lance against the sky, pure and white. At its very peak, a great horned bell hung gleaming coldly in the moonlight. The stranger's dedication to the gods was there, but of the stranger himself there was no sign. The manlings rejoiced that their father's work was done. They surged forward to enter the temple. Then, at the stroke of midnight, the great bell began to toll. Once, twice, thrice. Slow, heavy waves of sound rolled across the city. 4, 5, 6 times the bell rang, like the torpid pulse of a bronze giant. 7, 8, 9. The rolling of the bell grew louder with each ring, and the manlings staggered back from the temple, clutching their ears. 10, 11, 12, 13. At the 13th stroke, lightning split the skies and thunder echoed through the night. High above, the dark circle of Morsleib was lit by a bright flash and fell ominously silent. The manlings fled to their beds, frightened and puzzled by the portents they had seen. Next morning, they arose to find that the darkness had come to their city. Brooding storm clouds reared above the rooftops, and such rain fell as had never before been seen. Black like ash, the rain fell and puddled in the streets, slicking the cobbles with darkly iridescent colors. At first, some of the manlings didn't worry. They waited for the rain to stop so that they might resume their work. But the rain did not stop. The winds blew stronger, and lightning shook the high tower. Days stretched into weeks, and still the rain did not stop. Each night the bell tolled 13 times, and each morning the darkness lay across the city. The manlings became fearful and prayed to their gods. Still the rains did not stop, and the black clouds hung like a shroud over the fields of flattened corn. The manlings went to the dwarves and beseeched their help. The Longbeards were unconcerned. What matter a little rain on the surface? In their bosom of the earth all was warm and dry. Now the manlings huddled in their dwellings, fear gnawing at their hearts. They sent some of their number to faraway places to seek help, but none of them returned. Some went to the temple to pray and sacrifice their dwindling food to the gods, but they found the temple door closed to them. The rain grew heavier. Dark hailstones fell from the sky and crushed the sodden crops. The great bell tolled a death knell over the terrified city. Soon great stones cleft the heavens, rushing down like dark meteors to smash the homes of the manlings. Many sickened and died from no apparent cause, and the newborn babies of the manlings were hideously twisted. Skulking vermin devoured what little stored corn there was left, and the manlings began to starve. The manling elders went to see the dwarves again, and this time demanded their help. They wanted to bring their folk below ground to safety. They wanted food. The Longbeards grew angry and told the manlings that that the lower workings were flooded, and their food had also been devoured by rats. There remained barely enough food and shelter for them and their kinsmen. They cast the manlings out of their halls and closed their doors once more. In the ruins of the city above, each day became more deadly than the last. The manlings despaired and called for succor from the dark gods, whispered the names of forgotten demon princes in the hope of salvation. But none came. Instead, the vermin returned bigger and bolder than ever. Their slinking, furred shapes infested the broken city, feasting on the fallen, putting down the weak. Each midnight, the bell tolled 13 times on high, seeming now brazen and triumphant. The manlings lived as hunted creatures in their own city, as great rat packs roamed the streets in search of them. At last, the desperate manlings took up such weapons as they had and beat upon the dwarves' door, threatening that if they did not emerge, they would drag them out by their beards. No reply came from within. The manlings took up beams and battered down the doors to reveal the tunnels below, dark and empty. Stealing themselves, the pitiful remnants of the city's once proud populace descended. In the ancient hall of kingship, they found the dwarves, now naught but gnawed bones and scraps of cloth. And there they saw by the dying light of their torches the myriad eyes about them, glittering like liquid midnight as the rats closed in for the kill. The manlings stood back to back and fought for their lives, but against such implacable ferocity and countless numbers of the verminous horde, their weapons were useless. The tide of monstrous rats flowed over them one by one, dragging them down to be torn apart, the yellow chiseled teeth sinking into their soft flesh, the dark, tufted mats drowning their pitiful screams with their hideous chittering. Translated from the Chilean tale, The Doom of Kavzar, also called The Curse of 13. Thank you for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. And next up, the series finale, Spectacle Island.